Okay, I'm just going to take a look at the basics of granular synthesis as implemented in our Polarity engine. Kind of like a quick start guide to granular, if you like. So here we are with Polarity, and we've got a kind of initialized blank state. Now, great thing about Polarity is that although it comes with a lot of sample content and presets, you can use your own samples, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to start with a sample that's not in the set. I've got some vocal samples here. So tomorrow. So short vocal phrase. I'm going to drag it in, and that's now in the A element. Okay, so Polarity will sense the pitch, and generally it's pretty good. If you've got clear source material, then it does get the pitch right. If you don't like it, you can of course tune it yourself. And that will, if you've got this icon lit, then it will map it across the keyboard. If not, then it will be the same pitch throughout. But generally, I think you want this on. Okay, so you'll notice that we're currently playing. It currently sounds more or less like the original. There's a bit of fluttering going on, but we'll get to that. It's playing through. Now, the main set of controls for the granulation, the grain, are here, and I think it's best to look at these first. So we have settings for length, rate, attack, and decay. Now, you've just got to think of if a sampler itself in its original form breaks things into 48,000 samples per second, then a granular synthesis kind of does that at a bigger scale and makes much bigger chunks from your audio, audible chunks if you like, that you can manipulate and shape and get to move. And that's what you've got to think of the grain as. So if I take the attack and the decay down, then it's much more obvious. You can hear it chopping through the sample as it moves. This length, of course, controls the length of each grain. So if I reduce this, and the rate, of course, is the rate at which it's doing it. Because I've got this activated, we can sync to our DAW tempo. If I leave it off, you've just got a free millisecond control. So what's cool about granular is that you can make these rates very fast and these lengths are very small and get a kind of machine-like effect. Sounds pretty grungy. Now, the reason for the attack and the decay are to smooth the start and the end of each grain, because as you can hear, if you just have these as very hard, then you do get quite a choppy, grungy little effect on the fronts of the sample. So just need to increase the length a little bit. So you see, by just sort of balancing these controls, the length and the attack and decay, you can end up with quite a realistic place. Now, why would you want that? Well, you wouldn't want it just to play through the sample as we are here. But if we take a look at the scan control, this is controlling the rate at which it plays through the sample. It's currently set to 100%. If you click Alt and click on it, it'll be 100% and it'll move through at the normal speed. Now I could reduce that. Here we get a kind of time stretchy slowed down effect. I can set it to 0. It doesn't move at all. Now that at that point is which you're going to want to adjust the position controller. It's that this big fader here. You can see the cursor move. We can set this anywhere we want. So you now get a totally static sound. It's kind of totally frozen on one point, on one grain. And that's what's interesting to me about granular synthesis, this ability to freeze the timbre. You almost kind of you can take a snapshot of one piece of a sample, of one piece of timbre, and then you can start to work with that texture. So a way in which we can do this is using the grain LFO. So we're fixed in this one place, as you see, but if we introduce a bit of LFO control, you'll see it has a kind of an oscillation to it. And the grain LFO here is set with different oscillator shapes and a speed. And you hear as we speed it up, we get quite, it starts to sound a lot like a synth oscillator, and you can hear that oscillation, that beating. This is nice for pad sounds. Remember, we've used our attack and decay to really smooth out those grains. And there we go. So suddenly we've got a very musical synth-like tone. At that point you might jump over to your synth section here and maybe set a slower envelope. And maybe reduce the filter. So you see, yeah, you're getting a nice, we're getting a nice synth tone, a nice sort of pad tone there. Just going to bring that back again. Let's talk through some of the other controls. One more control we've got is Jitter, which will introduce some sort of random movement at the position. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to just knock off the LFO. So we're back to static. As I introduce this, you see it just starting to jump. At very extreme, it's all over the place. Maybe nice to have a small amount. What you can also do with the grains, we have a randomized section, so you could randomize each pitch, each grain's pitch, which kind of gives a sort of chorusy detuned effect. So, again, a kind of clustery 2001 type effect. And you can sync these to different modes, which is a really nice feature. You can also randomize the velocity. Now this will relate to any other sort of velocity modulation you set up in Polarity. So let's, currently by default you do have some velocity here. Let's just, so you can hear a bit of volume variation there. But also if you were to program some velocity modulation to your filter, you would hear some of those are at lower volume. What I'm going to do is just to make it a bit clearer. I'm going to slow down the rate. So if I back the velocity filter all the way off, you can hear we're down here at this low cutoff. So this is quite nice if you want to build a kind of choppy rhythmic sound, which is the other thing that really Granular excels at. So for that you might you'd shorten your envelope, find a rate that's nice and sync it to your tempo. So sync it somewhere. What have we got? So we've got a filter modulation there. So now we've set up this choppy, chordy-like sound. What we could now have that scan through our vocal sample as it does this. So we come back to our scan control, Just give it, you know, a small amount of movement and start back at the beginning here. So that's really cool. It's playing through the vocal there slowly. Or what you can also do is set it to go backwards. And when it reaches one end, it will wrap to the other end. If you don't want it to do that, what's handy is we have a minimum and maximum control. And you can set the minimum and maximum range to restrict the behavior. So as you see, it will wrap at either end, so you can get quite extreme and pick out just a small bit. Another option you have for adding movement is the FEG. Now this will FEG is in our synth filter section, and the position will simply follow any FEG you've set up. So if I make some settings here to our attack, decay, sustain, release. So currently we're not moving. I'll bring the position back to give it a bit of room to play. Now if I add some FEG, see? You see it kind of pulls itself back as you adjust the sustain portion. So in this way you could set up quite a controlled movement if you wanted to get that kind of effect. You can have a negative value as well. So that way it's repeatable with each note. So that gives you a really good idea of the different directions that Granular can lead you in. It can either get kind of fluffy and cloud-like and pad-like, or you can get quite grungy and just choppy and rhythmic. What's nice about Polarity, of course, is we have two elements, so you can do both of these things at once with the same sample if you want. So I could drag our same vocal sample down here. And start to look at maybe we could put a pad sound here to back with the choppy sound at the top. So I'm just going to turn that element off while I'm working with this. So the grain's about right. I think I'm gonna kill the scanning and introduce some LFO. Find a different position. That's nice. Okay, into the synth section. Slow down the envelope. Just check off. We've got all sorts of different filter types here. Yeah, we've got a nice ladder low pass here. Switch this back on. Bring down the level on that. Sounds pretty cool. We've got a full effects section here. This, you know, for element A and element B, you can select 3 different inserts, whatever you want. These are set up with some reverb and delay, and I've assigned those to this macro. We'll talk about macros later in another video. I'm just going to add some here. Maybe add some pitch. Kind of get a choral sound by thickening it up there with the pitch modulation. Okay, so we've created this nice pad patch. So how do we go about using these macro controls on the front panel to add modulation and expression to our patch? So go back into our editor. Again, we've got our two elements, and once again I'm going to isolate the element I'm working on. This is our choppy rhythmic element. You'll see at the bottom we've got 4 controls here. These represent the 4 macros, A, B, C, D. Here they are, A, B, C, D at the bottom, and you'll see that many controls, not all, but many have a letter here, an A, B, C, D, and you can assign as many of those as you want to whichever macro you want. So that can get quite powerful when you double them up. So taking the A, what I'm going to do is set this macro to full, no effect yet. And then I'm going to look at our grain section and maybe look at reducing the length. So we're instantly hearing the effect because I've turned the modulator to full. And the rate, if I reduce this, it'll get quicker and quicker and quicker. We'll get quite a glitchy sort of rhythm here. So that's our extreme position. And I can modulate between those positions. But that's not all we can do. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other grain controls here that we could assign to the same thing. So it might be interesting to add some jitter. Currently, we've not got any jitter happening here. Again, put that back on full. Gets a bit jumpy. I'm going to back that off to about here. We could add some pitch modulation. Maybe a small amount of that. We could change how it moves with the scanning. And have it scanning through, so you're getting quite a chaotic sound as a contrast to your very regular musical rhythmic sound. Okay, our second element, element B, going to switch that on. So at the moment that's unaffected by the macro. Just going to isolate it for a moment. So I think we don't want to do too much to this because we want that to remain a kind of stable pad, but let's see what we can do. If I change this to A, it's currently C. I think that's too much. I want this to stay on pitch. We could increase the LFO. That's nice because it adds a different kind of vowel formant as it's moved back in the waveform. A bit of jitter. We could move the whole position with the modulator. It gets quite chaotic there. I think maybe that's too much. Okay, so where are we? Let's bring back in our other element. This is our original setup. You can even, I mean, you can get also quite basic. We've got this modulation will control the volume of each element. This is currently assigned to A and B. So what I like to do with my programming here, and not all of the KV sound designers chose to do something different here, but I find it quite useful with B to have this like a crossfader between the two elements. So if we set that here and we set that all the way down and that all the way up, if we go hard off, we get one element, element A, and we go hard right, we get just the pad. In this way, it's quite easy to fine tune the blend. Now remember, we've assigned some spatial effects. Element D we call space. So you'll find a lot of the reverb and delay effects here are already pre-assigned to D. What's quite useful is to not, you've got a send here for each element, element A and element B, but what's quite useful is to not assign anything to this send fader and just use the mod faders here, so that we can go from 0 reverb to a lot of reverb. And the D. I've also, you'll notice, assigned the mix control of the delays using D. So again, we can go from no delay to lots of delay. Now that leaves one macro unassigned, that's C, and we call that movement. So with here, it's nice to maybe look at some synth parameters or other things that are causing some movement as a starting place. For example, we've got, of course, the grain LFO. Currently that's marked A, but we can just change that. So we could change the speed of this, though that's not assigned to this element, but it is to this one. So I caught myself out there. I go to C. That's it. So if we bring that all the way down on full, we've taken all the movement out of, so that's out of the pad, and that's slowed it down really nicely. But actually I think it'd probably be better the other way around, wouldn't it? So what I might do in this instance is to set this to 0, bring this down, bring it right down so there's barely any movement at all at 0, and then when we turn it up, we get all of this. Maybe the jitter as well. But this is A, we want that on C, and this on C. So this is really interesting what we're doing to our pad element here. Actually, I think that pitch modulation is a little bit too much at sort of medium values. Can take that out. I think also let's move the position back with C. Okay, that's interesting. That's introducing a lot of movement to the sound just by using the natural variation in the timbre. I think I need to set a minimum. Stop it disappearing off the end. So here we have a modulation set up. Okay, that gives you some ideas how we work with the macros when sound designing a patch in Polarity.